All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and we got to talk about all of these recent Washington football team roster cuts today. Of course, I'm going to talk about each player that was cut and dive a little bit deeper into the really notable names that were cut today. We've officially gotten our roster down to technically 70 players, but we have a 71st because David Bada is technically an international pathway player. But at the same time, we have to get this down from 71, including David Bada, to 53 by Tuesday, as in tomorrow, 4 p.m. So there were a lot of cuts today, 10 of them to be exact, and they have 28 more to go. Again, because David Bada is technically the 71st. He's always been an extra spot on the roster. When we were allowed 90 players, we had 91 because of David Bada. When we were allowed to have 85, we had 86. When we were allowed to have 80, we had 81. Now we're down to 71, trying to get to 53. They're already cutting guys early. So we're actually going into Tuesday with a better idea of who's going to make this team or not. Whereas some teams haven't really done much, their fans will just find out pretty much everything all at once. Whereas we kind of got like a third of the cuts out of the way today, which was pretty nice. But also I wanted to emphasize that we're going from 71 to 53. And David Bada, even though he's an extra slot that's been allowed throughout the offseason, it's not like we're allowed to have 54 players because of an international pathway player when it comes to the regular season. We're afforded an extra roster spot for international pathway players during mini camps, training camps, preseason, all of that. But when we hit the regular season, we have to get down to 53 players just like everybody else. And of course, I'm gonna dive into some of these players that we should be taking a look at from other teams that may have gotten cut or just free agents that are still available that haven't signed anywhere. KJ Wright. We're gonna dive into all of that. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the bell next to the subscription button so you get a notification immediately. And every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. As always, man, make sure you check out the rest of the channel. All of my videos are organized in playlists. I even have a comedy playlist for all of my funny videos. Again, like I've been telling y'all, it's about to be a really boring 2 weeks as far as Washington football team news goes. We may get some injury updates, but other than that, we're no longer getting those consistent daily updates from training camp. Everything is officially secretive. The media is either not allowed to even attend these practices, or they're not allowed to even like tweet about or take pictures or videos of what's going on. But with me not doing my daily training camp reports, that's going to give me a lot more free time to get a lot of my exclusive videos done for all of my channel members. I'm telling y'all, man, y'all memberships will be super worth it this season. I'm coming with all kinds of exclusive content. I'm having all of my gear and merchandise from before we became the Washington football team. Take y'all into a time machine with that one. I'm also gonna have a separate video where it's a room reveal, and then of course I'm gonna get a lot of these rookie film sessions done now that I have more time on my hands these next 2 weeks. And of course, channel members will get the exclusive longer versions of those videos as well. And we got to get these fantasy leagues started. So man, even though the Washington football team media wise is about to go into a ghost town, Street Scores will not. If anything, it's about to be even more content. But man, without further ado, man, let's get it. So officially, as of today, including David Bada, we have 71 players on roster. As of right now, 9:05 p.m. Eastern time while I'm recording this. We cut Steven Montez today. I'm assuming he's going to go to the practice squad, just like he was last year. No other teams have shown any interest in him, so I doubt he'll get picked up. Then we released running back Jonathan Williams. Highly doubted that he made the team anyway. I was honestly surprised he stayed over like a Lamar Miller. But now the question is, are we going to keep 4 running backs? Are we going to keep Peyton Barber and Jared Patterson? We'll see. Then wide receiver Isaiah Wright was cut. Again, I wasn't surprised. Ron Rivera was talking him up big time. Maybe that was just a strategy to try to hype up his trade value, and then nobody bid on it, so we just ended up cutting him anyway. I went into great detail in my last video about how Ron Rivera and the Washington organization are literally scouting social media and all of the reports coming out from different teams and seeing how other teams feel about the players that were currently on our team so that they could try to trade them rather than just releasing them. And I'm assuming after doing their research, nobody was really fighting for an Isaiah Wright, so they were like, we'll just go ahead and release him. And, you know, if he makes it to the practice squad, that would be cool. because he is a nice special teams contributor in the run game, and he still has potential, but this team went from rebuild mode to win now mode pretty quickly within like a 2-year span, honestly, kind of less than that. So like Isaiah Wright has all of this potential, but right now we can't bank on the guy that's pretty much all potential but cannot contribute at all right now, especially in this heavily competitive receiver group. Then wide receiver Tony Brown was cut as well. Wasn't surprised about that. Tight end Caleb Wilson was cut. That may be another guy they bring back to the practice squad because we signed him off of waivers when the Eagles cut him and nobody else wanted him. So I'm pretty sure they feel like it's safe to cut him and bring him back on the practice squad because more than likely no other team in the NFL wants him anyway. Then offensive lineman John Toth was cut. Defensive lineman Devaroe Lawrence was cut. I was just sad about this one. First of all, he's a veteran presence, but then also he's one of the funniest guys on the team. So I know the locker room is not going to be the same without him, but hopefully he can make it back to the practice squad. Then linebacker Joe Walker was cut as well. Cornerback Linden Stevens was cut, and safety Cole Luke was also cut today. That's 10 cuts. Again, we're down to 70 players technically, plus the international pathway player David Bada. Must reach 53 by 4 p.m. tomorrow, as in Tuesday, August 30th. And Cole Luke was pretty interesting because he was actually having a pretty good camp while DeShazier Everett was out, but then DeShazier Everett came back and Cole Luke kind of just got lost in the sauce. It wasn't like he was necessarily bad, but they clearly prefer DeShazier Everett or like a Derek Forrest that has a lot more potential and athleticism that they just recently spent a draft pick on over like a Cole Luke. Also, just in case if you didn't know, Washington is 13th on the waiver wire priority list. So there are only 12 teams that have priority over us. So say for example, if the Tampa Bay Buccaneers cut a player from their team and a lot of teams want them, we're 13th in line to try to fight and get that guy. So if the 12 teams who have waiver wire priority ahead of us don't want them, we're first in line to get them, even if another team wants them that's behind us in waiver wire priority. So that's really not that bad, honestly. We're ahead of more than half the league in waiver wire priority. So if any players get cut and we want them, our chances of getting them are quite likely. So that's pretty good to hear. Also, of course, even after we get this roster down to 53 as of Tuesday 4 p.m., anything can happen. Say at 5 p.m. Tuesday, as in tomorrow, August 30th, a team cuts a player that we really want, we'll just cut our player to sign that guy. And it's technically the official 53-man roster as of Tuesday 4 p.m., but nothing's official for real. It's not permanent. You never know what's going to happen. Again, we're 13th in waiver wire priorities. So if a player that we're really interested in that we've been watching all preseason from another team ends up getting cut after the 53-man roster deadline for whatever reason, maybe they bring back a player off of the COVID-19 list back to the active roster list and they have to just cut a guy, they cut the guy that we just happen to want, then the Washington organization may release a guy that's currently on the team that we thought was safe as of 4 p.m. for that guy. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this roster shapes up, even just heading to the Chargers game. It's very likely that the roster will look different going from Tuesday 4 p.m. that deadline to when we step out there against the Chargers at 1 p.m. It's quite likely, and that's excluding any injuries. But now we got to talk about some of these guys that we should be going out there and looking at. First of all, like everybody's been talking about, I feel like in Burgundy and Gold Nation, the obvious one is KJ Wright. Come on, bro. How is he not on an NFL roster right now? Pro Football Focus graded him the 8th best linebacker last year with a 75.3 overall grade. And then entering the 2021 season, they ranked their linebackers again, some of it based on what they did last year, but also projecting what they're going to do next year. KJ Wright was still the 14th best linebacker in the NFL according to Pro Football Focus, and he's definitely up there in my opinion. He's definitely one of the better linebackers. I feel like he's definitely the best blend of talent and dependability as a linebacker than anybody we have on our roster. Jamin Davis is all potential right now. Cole Holcomb is a nice blend of potential and some dependability, but he's not KJ Wright. And it's interesting too because they ranked Cole Holcomb as the 28th best linebacker in the NFL, which may come to some people's surprise. Again, I'm higher on Cole Holcomb than a lot of people in Burgundy and Gold Nation. I remember us having these debates last season. But it's still crazy that like Cole Holcomb, according to Pro Football Focus, is easily our best linebacker on our roster by far. And then he's ranked 28th in the NFL. KJ Wright is ranked 14th, and we still haven't gone to go get him. I know Pro Football Focus isn't the end-all be-all, but this is definitely somewhere where I agree with Pro Football Focus, where it's like, I don't understand how KJ Wright is still not signed somewhere, especially with us, with our situation, because we saw how terrible our linebacker depth was against the Ravens. Granted, they were playing their starters in the very beginning, and we came straight out there with the second stringers and third stringers. But like I keep saying, these second stringers and third stringers have to ball out against first stringers, because when we get the regular season games, it doesn't matter if you're first, second, third string or whatever. When you're out there on the field, you're going against the best of the best any game, any day. We need you to perform. We expect you to perform. So I don't care if the Ravens went out there with first stringers, we went out there with our third stringers, because there may be a moment that our third stringers have to play in a regular season game when wins and losses matter. So there's no excuses. And again, our linebackers were terrible. They were still even terrible after the Ravens sat their starters. Really, the only linebacker that even kind of looked like something at times was Khaleke Hudson, which was encouraging. But overall, our linebacker group, like we've been saying all offseason, is probably going to be the biggest weakness on the team. Between that and kicker, easily right now, especially depth-wise for linebacker. So I just don't understand why we're not bringing in a KJ Wright. I don't care if it's injury concerns. I don't care what it is. We should at least have him on the roster, because honestly, I feel like he should be able to start on this team. I would love to run Cole Holcomb, KJ Wright, and Jamin Davis as our linebacker core. I would be ecstatic at that idea. But who knows, man? I mean, it sounds like we're not looking at him. It sounds like a lot of NFL teams aren't looking at him, as he's still a free agent right now for no reason. I'm not sure if he's asking for too much money. I really have no idea, but this is crazy to me. This KJ Wright situation is wild. If I'm missing something, please get in the comment section and let me know what I'm missing on the KJ Wright situation. And then there's also Duron Lee. Remember the Ohio State linebacker drafted in the first round by the New York Jets back in 2016? He hasn't had a good NFL career so far, but he still has potential. And I'd just be interested in bringing him in to see what he can do and if he can compete, because first of all, again, our linebacker depth is terrible. Secondly, with the way our defensive line is set up, it's supposed to literally be the best in the NFL this upcoming season. I feel like that's an easy statement to make. I'm interested in seeing what some of these guys that don't necessarily look good behind worse defensive lines look like behind ours, because ours is going to keep guys clean, and all you have to do is just be instinctual and be quick, be athletic. You don't necessarily have to be the biggest block shedder, the biggest, strongest linebacker that could just take on an offensive tackle and move him out of the way to go make a play. The way our defense is set up is very athleticism friendly, very speed friendly. You don't have to be the strongest guy out there. Just be instinctual, be a freak athlete, and we can make it work behind this defensive line. So I'm interested in guys like a Duron Lee, who hasn't worked out for the Jets, for the Chiefs, for the Bills, for the Raiders. Maybe he comes here, and this will be easily the best defensive line he's ever played behind in his life. And maybe he finds his calling here. Who knows? And then there's just a lot of free agents that are still available out there that is just like crazy. I mean, somebody even brought up the point that, do we bring back Trent Murphy as some depth? Because Ron Rivera did say that even though he loves William Bradley King and Shaka Toney, he wants some type of veteran edge rusher that they can depend on immediately, whereas those other guys are more so potential and guys we're going to groom and develop to be our dominant edge rushers of the future behind Chase Young and Montez Sweat. But as of right now, we're not depending on William Bradley King and Shaka Toney to go out there and play meaningful minutes, meaningful snaps in regular season games. And they want a guy that can do that. And Trent Murphy may be very cheap. He's 30 years old. Who knows? A reunion? Granted, this is a completely different organization from the one that he was here with us. I mean, that was the Jay Gruden era, the Bruce Allen era. So Trent Murphy probably isn't even on Ron Rivera or Jack Del Rio's radar at all. They have no ties to him at all, I believe. But it's just interesting. And I'm not saying sign these guys, but it's still interesting that like Mitchell Schwartz is a free agent, David DeCastro, Olivier Vernon, Trey Boston still out there, Kenny Vaccaro. And I'm just naming players at positions where we don't necessarily need a starter, but it would be nice to have some more depth, especially at linebacker and for backup edge rushers right now, especially veteran-wise. And then speaking of former players like Trent Murphy, the Eagles waived offensive lineman Ross Pierschbacher. I know a lot of people really liked him. Highly doubt he comes here, but you know, just another name to mention. And even crazier, Jordan Brailford was cut by the Minnesota Vikings. He looked really good for us before we released him. We just didn't have space for him last year with Ryan Kerrigan and all of these guys that we were trying to fit on the roster. So maybe we take a look at Jordan Brailford being that slightly veteran-ish backup defensive end that I still like. Jordan Brailford, I liked him a lot. I was sad when we cut him. Then there's also linebacker Benardrick McKinney. Now, he's definitely outside of his prime, but again, bring him in as a linebacker to compete. The Dolphins just released him after trading for him from the Texans. I say, why not at least see what he can do? Bring him to a practice again. This defensive line can change careers. I'm interested in seeing what he looks like behind this defensive line. Any linebacker that's available right now, honestly. Also, quarterback Kyle Lauletta was released by the Browns today. I mean, he actually looked pretty good in the preseason, especially that last game. And at this point, it's like bringing anybody. Steven Montez, we already know he's destined for practice squad. And I like Ryan Fitzpatrick and Taylor Heinicke. They're not necessarily assumed to be franchise quarterbacks, but I'm comfortable with them this year, especially if we're not expecting to win a Super Bowl. I think we could definitely win this division with those two quarterbacks. But like Kyle Allen, I'm not a big fan of his at all. He looked really bad in that last preseason game like I expected him to before he even threw one pass. And so why not bring in a Kyle Lauletta to see what he has in him at least? I already know what I've got in Kyle Allen. That's why I was making an argument for Steven Montez over Kyle Allen. Even though Kyle Allen clearly knows the offense way better than Steven Montez does, at least Steven Montez, he has a mysterious ceiling, just like Kyle Lauletta. Kyle Allen, we know exactly what he is. We know at the very best what he's going to be, and I don't like that. So I just don't exactly see the point in keeping him along, because even though he does have a relatively high floor for backup standards, if Kyle Allen has to come out onto the field, I'm not expecting us to win that game anyway. So I prefer to take my chances with a guy with a higher ceiling, a more mysterious guy like a Kyle Lauletta. Again, especially since he looked pretty good in that last preseason game for the Browns. Also, we're connected to Kyle Lauletta in a way. Ben Standig pointed out 2 ways that we're connected to Kyle Lauletta and why we may actually take a look at him. First of all, Washington staff had a legitimate interest in Kyle Lauletta back when he was coming out of the draft in 2018. Now, granted, that was a different Washington organization. Everything is different now, but some people from that 2018 Washington organization is still here. You never know. Maybe they're in Ron Rivera Scott Turner's ear like, hey man, check him out. And then also, speaking of new guys who are important to this new era of Washington football, Scott Turner, while he was the Panthers QB coach, was one of the very few people who went to Kyle Lauletta's 2018 Pro Day. So you never know, man. Maybe I wake up tomorrow morning and we've signed Kyle Lauletta to a very cheap deal just to let him compete against a Kyle Allen or something. I don't know. And maybe we release Kyle Allen. I have no idea. Also, my love for Washington on Instagram brought up the idea of Shedrick Redwine. He's normally a safety, but he has played some will linebacker at times. So if we wanted to have a dependable weak side coverage linebacker, maybe we could try him. And he even brought up a good point that I forgot about, that he trained under Sean Taylor at one point. And he has a lot of potential, and really the only reason he got released by the Browns because they just have one of the deepest, highest ceiling secondaries probably in the NFL. I wouldn't say they have the best secondary, but if you're just looking at all of their recent draft picks, all of the draft steals they've gotten, guys that like if they weren't hurt, the Browns would have never even had a chance to get them because they would have won in the first round. But the Browns was able to scoop up guys in the 3rd, 4th round that easily had first round talents, and they've been doing that for like the past 3 years, especially in the secondary. Not even to mention JOK, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. I mean, they just been killing it and taking chances on these high talent, high ceiling guys, these boomer bust guys in the draft. And Shedrick Redwine was just one of the guys on the outside looking in. I'd be surprised if no team picks him up at all. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't, but I'd be pretty surprised if he doesn't immediately get picked up on some team. Also, the Browns, again, with the crazy depth they have, they're just one of those teams along with us and especially the Buccaneers, these really talented teams to where the players they're cutting should go elsewhere and get signed immediately. You have defensive tackle Marvin Wilson, who was like one of the most highly coveted undrafted free agents back in the draft in May. The Browns want him to get back onto the practice squad, but I wouldn't be surprised if a team scoops him up. And if we just want some really good defensive line depth, there you go. High ceiling player at interior defensive line. And then also, lastly, before we get up out of here, I don't want him, but the Colts released veteran safety Sean Davis. I've just been trying to keep track of every former Washington player that got cut today, and that's another one. Again, I saved him for the end because I'm not necessarily interested in him, but I wanted to bring that to y'all attention that Sean Davis is just out here as a free agent. Didn't work out with the Steelers. I don't know where he went in between. Maybe he didn't go anywhere else in between. Maybe he went from us Steelers to Colts, but as of right now, the Colts just released him. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please let me know if you agree or disagree with any of the players that I talked about, any of the cuts that we made, any of the players that you think we will end up cutting or should cut that are still currently on the roster, any of the players that are available out there. Who do you want? Are you big on KJ Wright just like me? all of that type of stuff, man. So please get in the comment section, be active in there. I'm definitely going to be checking those out and replying. Also, please like this video if you liked it, if you learned anything. And as always, man, I appreciate all my supporters, man. Big shouts out to everybody that donates to the channel. A special shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors, whose names you see scrolling on the screen right now. Man, I really appreciate all y'all, man. Big time. Catch y'all later. I'm out.